Hi, and welcome back to 1 Acre in the Napa Valley here in our Yountville vineyard on just a beautiful mid-March morning for episode number 11. It's our spring pruning episode. So here's the little vine that we've been working with over the last year. You may remember last March we pruned this vine down to just 2 buds, and then we actually developed the trunk as it grew up in May. So what we're going to do now is this is going to be an example of what would be spur and cane pruning. So this vine wound up being a little bit weak. As you can see, it's not as strong as I would have liked to have seen it, but I think the gophers kind of got to it a bit. But that happens in life. So here's what we're going to do. You can see we want to, on each of these little shoots here, we want to develop 4 spurs. So I'm going to cut this one down and just leave 2 buds. There's that one. And we'll cut this one down to 2 buds. There we go. And cut this one down. There's a bud here and one above. And now the last bud here and one here. So that'll leave us 1, 2, 3, 4. And this one I'm going to prune off and just clean up. And then the last thing I'm going to do is, you may notice that on the stalk or the trunk itself, there's a few buds like this one. We're just going to clean those off so we don't develop shoots as we go. Work our way right on down, and then there's just a little bit of dead wood here that we'll prune off and clean up. And now our little friend is ready for this season. This will be the 3rd season. So the exciting thing now is we actually are going to have some fruit from our vines this year. So that'll be really nice. So we'll look forward to that. Now there's a couple other things I'd like to show you before we finish up with our episode. Now something else that can happen this time of the year, and it's good to address as we see it, are shoots that can develop from the rootstock itself. Now on this neighboring plant, there's a good example of that. If we look here, this one's all been nicely pruned like we saw on the other one with the spur pruning. But if we drop down, and I dug a little hole, you can see that this shoot right here is not Cabernet. It's in fact part of the rootstock material. Sometimes at the nursery a bud can be left on, or a bud is missed, and what happens is a shoot is developing from the rootstock itself. But we don't want that, because otherwise it'll just take away from the strength of the plant. So I dug this out just to show, and I'm going to come right down here nice and flat on the in fact I'll do it this way so you can see it better, nice and flat on the rootstock material, and cut that off. You can see where I cut it, and that's actually just a shoot that's developed from the rootstock. So that's good to take off. I'll leave that wound on the plant open to the air for a little bit and allow it to dry out. Now, get my head out from underneath the wire. There's one other thing I'd like to show you, and that's a cordon style pruning, which I've been doing on another row. So we'll take a look at that, and then we'll be able to compare the two. So let's head over there. Now in the vineyard, I'm actually using 2 different techniques, really experimenting with 2 different techniques when it comes to the training of the vines. The first is what we saw just a moment ago, where we've got a vine that is brought up to the wire and then clipped to develop spurs, like the 4 spurs we saw, each of which will develop a cane. So that's a spur and cane pruning. This vine, I did something a little bit different with, and this is a cordon style or a cordon technique of training. What it did was, instead of cutting this at the wire, I laid out the cane to develop the cordon itself. Each one of the buds that you see here will actually develop ultimately a spur. And then one of these lower buds here will push a shoot that we'll lay out in the opposite direction to develop the traditional cordon style. So what we'll do as we go through the year, I'll mark this plant just like I marked the other one, and we can compare each of the techniques as we go through the year and the styles of pruning that we would use for both. And of course we'll be able to examine and compare the crop loads on both also. As we finish up our episode, there's just one other thing that I would like to touch on that actually is of concern this time of the year, and that's frost. What happens when we have the warm days like this, the buds will start to push, probably with even the next couple of weeks by the 1st of April. But if you look behind me, you can see we have the slopes of the Stag's Leap District, and we're still getting cold nights. And what can happen is that cold air can flow down in the evenings and early mornings and create frost damage. So we're doing 2 different things without a fan that would normally be used to help out with that. One is late spring pruning, like what you can see. Being the middle of March now, we're finishing up with that. But the other thing that really helps a great deal with frost protection is you can see the rows have been mowed very tightly. And I did this so that the ground will slowly radiate heat at night after it absorbs it all day long. Interestingly enough, the tight ground cover like this even does better at a slow radiation of heat in the evenings and early mornings, more so than disc ground. So that's part of the technique also for frost protection and protecting the little buds as we go into the season. So that'll finish episode number 11. Now we're very excited because this year we're actually going to be making wine from the fruit that we've grown here at this vineyard. And we're going to follow that entire process, document it with our videos. Now along that line, there's been a number who have asked about our video series being on a DVD and that they would like to have access to that. So I'm excited to let everyone know we're going to be doing just that. With the series of videos that we've done in the past and the ones that we're going to do this year, all the way through the winemaking process, we're going to be making available in a DVD series. So if you'd like to get on the list for that, please contact me. You can see the email there, and we'll put you on the mailing list and be sure to have you down when we have those all produced. So thanks very much for joining us here, and we'll look forward to seeing you soon here at 1 Acre in the Napa Valley.